Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rowena Brown, and I proudly serve as District Director for State Assemblymember Mia Bonta. We are grateful that you have set aside your time to join this legislative town hall conversation. We have prepared a nice program for all of you in attendance that will lead with opening remarks from Assemblymember Mia Bonta, along with guest speakers from the city of Alameda, Root and Rebound, and the Green Lining Institute. Additionally, you will hear from our legislative team based in Sacramento about working on key legislation this session. And a special thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance. We welcome you to scan the QR code to submit further questions, or you can add them to the question and answer section of the Zoom. Can you display the QR code? We plan to make time for question and answers closer to 7 p.m. Assemblymember Mia Bonta was sworn into office on September of 2021. And now, well into her second term, she has worked hard to advance equity in education, support child care providers, healthcare professionals. She is a fierce advocate for reproductive justice and the rights of the LGBTQ+ community. She has worked hard to secure more housing, supportive services for the reentry community, worked on climate-focused initiatives, and alternatives to policing models. Honestly, a true champion for us all. And with that, it is my absolute honor to welcome Assembly District 18 Assemblymember Mia Bonta.
Thank you so much, Rowena. Good evening, community, and thank you for joining my virtual town hall to discuss some of our office's legislative wins for the 2023 legislative session. It's been a privilege serving on behalf of the 18th Assembly District, and I always say serving the beautiful people of Oakland, Alameda, and Emeryville. And here in the district, the team led by our District Director, Rowena Brown, who just introduced us, and our field reps, Sam Kevy, Helser Zavala, and others have worked to assist constituents with EDD claims. We fought to make sure Alameda County was added to FEMA's list of counties eligible for additional resources after the January floods, and we continue to help support and work to address the ongoing housing crisis. I'm so grateful for our team because they have answered, I'm sure, thousands of constituent calls over the last several months. I've had meetings with local electeds, business owners, and community members about the increase in crime and work to solidify grants for small businesses and increase law enforcement presence with the local administration. We've outreached to the community over 2.1 million times, using our e-newsletters to inform residents about vital community needs like payment plans for student loans, state and local grant opportunities, and along with resources to lift up and uplift our small business community. Throughout the year, I continuously engaged and met the needs of our constituents in local municipalities through my advocacy with ongoing letters of support directed to the federal, state, county, and city institutions. These letters uplifted projects and initiatives aimed at bringing vital financial resources and policies that promote the well-being and health of every individual. This year was quite busy for the Capitol team as well. We had an aggressive legislative agenda that touched on reproductive rights, security for public officials, education, childcare, public safety, and housing. We were successful in getting many of our bills signed by the governor. And as Rowena mentioned, we will hear from a few of our bills sponsors momentarily. As a personal champion for education, I was overjoyed to author AB 1273, signed by the governor most recently. This bill will convene a work group to propose guidelines and will help determine how many classified employees are reasonably required to meet the needs of health, safety, and success for students and staff in our schools. Because we know that our classified employees are the backbone of our school environments, and it's important to make sure that there's a right measure and mix between who is supporting our students and our students in the classrooms and throughout the school. They help with key safety resources, including student nutrition, transportation, para-education services, and maintenance needs are met. I also focused on childcare reform with AB 51. This bill sought to support equitable funding of community childcare providers and create a just transition for community-based providers as universal TK is implemented. And although we couldn't get this one across the finish line right now, my Capitol team continues to do further research on this legislation and looks forward to introducing this bill again to ensure that we have strengthened resources for our early childcare providers. As a community, we must do everything possible to support the childcare system, which collectively bolsters every industry and serves as the backbone of our state's economy and ensures quality childcare for our children and families. Additionally, as a chair of Budget Sub 5 committee, which is public safety, I was focused on bringing forth rehabilitation programs and services to our incarcerated community. I was focused on the R in CDCR, rehabilitation. I introduced AB 1104, Pathway to Community-Based Transformation Act, also signed into law by the governor, emphasizing that the purpose of incarceration is to rehabilitate a person so that they can successfully reintegrate back into our communities. AB 1104 focused on incarcerated individuals being afforded opportunities for restorative justice, trauma healing, education, and participation in community-based programming designed to assist in successful reintegration after release. I was also grateful to author AB 1186. This one had a coalition of sponsors that included Oakland-based nonprofit Courage, with many of our Oakland youth organizers in support of this vital legislation. This bill was focused on replacing the existing system of youth restitution with a more timely and accessible system of payment for people harmed by youth. Instead of ordering youth to pay restitution, courts may order youth to participate in community service, take part in restoration programming, or complete employment, mental health, or other personal development programs, so that youth can have meaningful accountability when they commit harm and are not saddled for their lifetime with a mistake that they made when they were younger. In addition to the legislation that I authored, I was proud to co-author and support many of my colleagues' legislations, both in the State Assembly and the Senate, whether it was to support healthcare workers with SB 525 that raised the minimum wage to $25 an hour, or supporting tenant protections with SB 567 and SB 4. And I know that many of you emailed, called, and joined supporting the Ebony Alert bill by Senator Bradford. These bills are vital, and your participation making sure that they cross the finish line was felt for sure. I get to say always that 8018 is the most progressive district in the state of California, and we certainly demonstrated that with raising our voice throughout the state. And I'm very excited additionally to support AB 645, which places the city of Oakland on a 5-year pilot program to give local transportation authorities the ability to install speed safety cameras at a time when we know that public safety is so important. What a year. And with that, let's dive into a conversation about some of the legislation that we've just talked about and hear from some of our bill sponsors. Back to you, Ro.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Bonta. You and the team have been so busy working on behalf of the 18th District. And now I would like to introduce our legislative aide, Eliza Brooks, and also Sarah Henry, Public Information Officer for the City of Alameda, and they will discuss AB 1706.
Good afternoon. AB 1706 authorizes the State Lands Commission to transfer lands known as the Encinal Terminals to the City of Alameda pursuant to a recently approved exchange agreement. The Encinal Terminals property includes 3 privately owned parcels and 1 publicly owned parcel granted to the city by the legislature and subject to the public trust. In years past, attempts at development have failed, in large part because of the unsuitable configuration of the public and private parcels, and thus the land has been sitting vacant since 2010. So the city and the private property owner, as well as the State Lands Commission, recently entered into an exchange agreement to reconfigure the property lines, and AB 1706 authorizes this agreement, helping to move along the production of much needed housing, as well as the improvement of waterfront parks, the replacement of dilapidated wharf structures, and the extension of the Bay Trail. So we have Sarah Henry with the city of Alameda with us. And a question for her is, how will AB 1706 promote access and enjoyment of public land? And can you share what the city has planned to do with the land?
Thank you so much, Eliza and Rowena and Assemblymember Bonta. It's great to be here with you all today. The city is deeply appreciative of the work that this office does to advocate on behalf of our residents and businesses. And one of the biggest reasons that I enjoy working for local government is the ability to create change when change is needed, like this bill. So AB 1706, it does several important things for Alameda. So starting with the most important is that it makes it possible to redevelop this property for housing and publicly owned waterfront public parks. So without this legislation, the land would have remained a vacant blight on the waterfront. The legislation ensures that the city of Alameda and the people of Alameda will own the waterfront lands as a trustee for the state of California. And the private land that's being developed will pay for the construction of these public waterfront lands. So without this legislation, the private project could not move forward, and the legislation made it possible for the city to receive fully developed waterfront parks at no cost to the Alameda taxpayer. Once the private land is developed, there will be 589 new housing units, including 80 affordable housing units, along with commercial retail space and a marina with 160 berths and more than 4 acres of publicly owned waterfront parks, including a bay trail, a public kayak launch, and a water shuttle landing. By authoring AB 1706, Assemblymember Bonta facilitated the productive reuse and redevelopment of these vacant and underutilized lands for much needed housing, maritime uses, and publicly available open space. And we can't wait to see it all happen. And then just finally, in the season of thanks, I also wanted to share the city's thanks to Assemblymember Bonta for securing state funding over the past 2 years for Alameda's care team, our alternative to police response for people in mental health crisis, and for our safe parking program and homeless day center at Alameda Point. So thank you again for inviting us today and for all that AB 18 does for this region.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think, and thank you, Eliza, for sharing what this bill does. This is a perfect example of what happens when our city and state governments are working together. Sometimes what we need to do in terms of legislation is just to be able to thread a very important needle. In this instance, we were able to ensure over 500 housing units and is very similar to the work that we hope to do in future years throughout the district.
Yeah, this one is just so exciting. I wish that Zoom webinar allows you to use the emoji expressions because it's just so exciting. So thank you so much, Eliza and Sarah, for highlighting this transformational piece of legislation that really serves as an amazing example for other cities to follow. And now at this time, I would like to introduce our legislative director, Heidi Dominguez, who will lead us into a conversation about AB 1148 and AB 1525. We also have with us Gail Yin from Root and Rebound. Heidi?
Good evening, everyone. So I'll touch on 1148 first. 1148 provides additional time for formerly incarcerated parents to get back on their feet before resuming child support payments. This bill was born out of direct experiences of people reentering society and struggling to make ends meet, and will ultimately help parents make meaningful child support payments while also being able to support themselves. So luckily, we have Gail Yin in here to talk more about AB 1148. So a question for you, Gail, is why is 1148 so crucial for families of formerly incarcerated community?
Yeah, thank you so much, Heidi. And thank you again, Rowena, and especially Assemblymember Bonta for hosting this town hall this evening. It's great to be here tonight with everyone. So I work at Root and Rebound, which is a legal service nonprofit supporting formerly incarcerated people navigate reentry barriers. We're headquartered in Oakland, and we have offices in Fresno and LA. So as Heidi mentioned, the inspiration for AB 1148 came directly from our clients, which are formerly incarcerated women. While navigating multiple systems in impoverished communities and unable to find employment, these women are burdened with financial strains, including the inability to make ends meet or their child support obligations. So I'll share a story of one of our clients, Louise, who is actually experiencing this issue right now and why AB 1148 was needed and is so important. So Louise was released from jail in June of 2021. When she came home, she was behind $4,000 in child support payments. Her court-ordered monthly payment was about $765, but she was unable to find a job for 7 months. By the time she finally became employed, her debt had risen to almost $11,000, negatively affecting her credit and creating additional barriers to finding housing and taking care of her children. More than half of her paycheck was being garnished and leading to further financial instability. And unfortunately, her story isn't out of the norm, as we've seen this affect many other people that we serve. So AB 1148 will now ensure that Louise and other people like her are given sufficient time to reach some financial stability before they return to making child support payments. Reentry is a difficult journey, and we must take that status into consideration. And we can't expect or assume people have the same financial resources and means they did prior to incarceration, nor should people be expected to make the same monthly court order amount prior to being incarcerated. So this 10-month extension is an important step to supporting formerly incarcerated parents and setting them up for success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail and Heidi, for sharing that legislation. This one was really important for us to be able to really think about how our child regulation system goes, and also to think about the impact that people who are trying to re-enter back into our community, 85% of the people who are in jail and prison come back to our communities. And what we want them to be able to do is to do so with a transition that allows for them to easily reconnect back with their families, with our communities, and to become thriving neighbors and members of our community again. And this bill certainly allows for the change that we need in our child support system so that people are placing a priority on connecting back with their children instead of worrying about the debt that they are incurring, which could cause recidivism. So we're very thankful to Root and Rebound for sponsoring this bill and for all of your advocacy and work throughout the year to make sure that this got signed by the governor. So thank you very much.
Thank you both. And talking about changes needed, I think this is a great time to talk about transportation equity, and that leads us to talk about AB 1525. To talk about 1525, we also have someone from Greenlining Institute, Hannah Krieger. Before I turn it over to her with a question, briefly introducing what AB 1525 would have done, which is require, among many things that were really great in the bill, that 60% of the funding allocated to the California State Transportation Agency, California Department of Transportation, and California Transportation Commission to be allocated for projects for priority populations. Although we didn't get this bill across the finish line, the bill furthered conversations on transportation equity by highlighting the need to track how transportation projects are providing benefits to disadvantaged communities. Hannah, a question for you. Why is AB 1525 such a transformational bill, and how can we continue to move forward in advancing transportation equity?
Absolutely. And thank you to Assemblymember Bonta and all of your staff. Excited to be here. I'm Hannah Krieger, Senior Program Manager of Climate Equity at the Greenlining Institute, a Oakland-based nonprofit advancing racial equity. So, I mean, really across the state of California, low income and communities of color suffer disproportionately from transportation-related air pollution, longer, less reliable commutes, and unsafe transportation infrastructure that puts their lives at risks. And this worsens health outcomes, it creates barriers to economic opportunities, and all of this reinforces cycles of racial disparities. And this is largely due to redlining, a long-standing lack of reliable transportation investments, and the intentional building of highways through our communities. So AB 1525 would have really aimed to change this game, to prioritize clean, sustainable transportation investments into those same communities that face the most poverty and pollution, and who bear the burden of dirty, polluting transportation types, such as highways and good movements. And even though this bill was not successful this year, it really did push the conversation forward on highlighting the need for the state to actually track how transportation investments are benefiting disadvantaged communities. And it also emphasized the importance of prioritizing clean transportation. And the good news is we do see several opportunities through advocacy at the state transportation agencies to hold California accountable to prioritizing the types of transportation projects that will benefit our communities, such as walking, biking, public transit, and vehicle electrification, and to fund less of those projects like highway widening that continue to harm the health of our communities. And so all of this will, of course, require transparency, accountability, and the reprioritization of transportation investments, which is certainly quite ambitious. But again, the good news is we know exactly what we have to do to advance transportation equity. We know what types of projects we should be prioritizing. We know what types of projects are most harmful to our climate and our communities. And we know which communities across the state would benefit most from these investments. And so ultimately, to be successful in advancing transportation equity strategies, what we need to do is build broad coalitions with health, housing, labor, and other partners. We have to find this common ground to take those steps forward, and laying this groundwork will really help us to build the power to ensure that an ambitious bill like AB 1525 can be signed into law into the future, so that we can have a connected transportation system in California that is healthy, safe, and sustainable for everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Hannah and Heidi, for demonstrating what it means to be able to have such an incredible resource in our community of advocacy and expertise in organizations like the Green Lining Institute. AB 1525 really focused on our intention to continue to address inequities in infrastructure, in our healthcare system, in education, and in housing. And this was an incredibly good start. Thankfully, some of the components of this legislation were actually covered in other legislation carried in the Assembly this year, which we were proud to be able to help to initiate. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with Green Lining on transportation equity and many other issues.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Heidi, Hannah, and Gail, for your work on these equity-focused pieces of legislation. And now we would like to briefly discuss Assemblymember Bonta's Food is Medicine bill. Here in Alameda County, every day we remember the life and legacy of the late Supervisor Wilma Chan. Recognizing that anti-poverty work is at the forefront of Assemblymember Bonta's work and the work that she is doing. Please allow me to introduce Monica, legislative aide that worked on AB 1644, to this conversation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Rowena, for the introduction. AB 1644 would make medically supported food and nutrition interventions a covered benefit under the Medi-Cal program, and will require medically supported food and nutrition interventions to be covered when determined medically necessary by health providers. Currently, this is a covered benefit if there is an existing pilot program in the county and the recipient's Medi-Cal plan is one that covers medically necessary food and nutrition interventions. Some of these programs that are offered under CalAIM are set to expire in 2027. AB 1644 would ensure a smooth transition in 2026 so that recipients are not left without these covered services. A question that we have received often after introducing this bill, and I will turn it over to Assemblymember Bonta, is why is this bill important to you?
Thank you, Monica. This bill, it really is important for a few reasons and personal. One is we have such a resource here in Alameda County with Supervisor Chan for so many years, really crafting a very unique program that really addressed the fact that food is a basic need and a basic component of how we keep ourselves healthy and how we keep communities healthy. And we were able to work with the Alameda County Health Department as well as Supervisor Chan in an earlier iteration of this bill, and we're able to really think about how we might be able to lift up this work for the entire state of California for Medi-Cal recipients. And this is personal to me. I believe that food is something that nobody should be without. And it's crazy that we have a healthcare system, unfortunately, that makes it easier to get an operation than it does to be able to get the sustenance that we need to feed our bodies. So we'll be working on this continually into the future, certainly with legislation that will be focused on in this next year. And it's so incredibly important to be able to address the health inequities that our communities are facing. So thank you, Monica, for all of your work to get this over the finish line, and we will continue to work on this. And I'm thankful that we now have the opportunity, with me stepping into a role as Assembly Health Chair, to be able to really carry on this important work in this legislation.
Thank you so much, Monica. And before I segue into our next part of the town hall, there's a question in the chat that I just wanted to I know that we are providing a lot of resources about the legislation and this work in the chat with some very robust slides as well. And so I just wanted you all to know that we're recording the town hall, and we will be generating an e-newsletter that will go out not too long after this town hall with all of this information. So it will all be available. And once again, thank you so much for joining our conversation this evening. And so Assemblymember Bonta, along with the legislation that you've been working on, we know that another way that we can really transform our communities is through the budget. Would you like to share a little bit about some of the ways that some of the wins you were able to secure this year for the district?
Thank you, Ro. In my first full term as a legislator, one of the things that we were focused on was making sure to bring resources back into our community and into our district. And with that, we were able to secure funding to help with the capital corridor improvements in Alameda and Emeryville. We were able to ensure that Alameda Point safe parking and the homeless day center is further supported to support our unhoused community and our unhoused seniors. In particular, we increased opportunity for arts education for Oakland students and Alameda County students throughout in our district by funding the Oakland Symphony. And we helped to make sure that we had funding for the Huey P. Newton Center for Research and Action Education. This is incredibly important given the fact that we have such a powerful asset and legacy here in our district, with the city of Oakland being home to the Black Panthers. And that opportunity was to further our collective understanding and knowledge of the importance of the work of the Black Panthers and Huey P. Newton. And we also provided a $5 million investment in the city of Oakland's macro program, which is an alternative to the policing model, which allows us to be able to focus on mental health, first response in a way that is holistic, and creates a better opportunity for fewer negative engagements between our police force and our community members, to create more trusting environment for our first responders in our community. Some of the important statewide funding was also very important this year. For us, we were able to ensure that $10 million were garnered for the Diversity Education Leaders Pipeline Initiative that creates more opportunities to increase diversity and cultivate culturally responsive TK-12 school administrators. $21 million for community-based organizations to provide prison programming, which is so quintessential to ensure that we have strong rehabilitation and reentry programming. $40 million for communities throughout the state to support recovery efforts around flooding. We were ensured that we preserved $40 million for the Public Defenders Pilot Program, so critical so that people can actually have an adequate defense in our criminal justice system. And we preserved $20 million for the next 2 years to support court-appointed special advocates. $10 million as well for family justice centers to ensure that families have a place to be able to go to receive the supports that they need while they're interacting and interfacing with our court systems throughout, and $7 million over the next 3 years to support survivors and victims of human trafficking. This is such a critical area of work, particularly in our district, and from that piece of budget advocacy that we were able to do, we also focused on, and will focus on this next year, introducing the Human Trafficking Survivors Protection Act. So we're linking our budget wins and resources that we were able to garner to legislation that will carry on into the next year. And on that note, we'll go back to Ro.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And so I think this leads us perfectly into kind of a question and answer part of the town hall. And so many of you outreach to us via the link. So I have some questions that were previously submitted, and also recognizing there are some great questions also in the chat as well. So I feel like this next question, I think just for the sake of the flow, why don't we start first with, there's this question, how do we make sure that AB 1644 gets signed? Assemblymember Bonta, Monica, how would you?
So as a reminder, AB 1644, because I never remember any of the numbers, is our food as medicine bill. We've continued to support this conversation with the conversations with the administration and our fellow members and colleagues throughout. One key difference this year I mentioned before is that I am now chair of the Assembly Health Committee, which I think is going to ensure that we have an opportunity to continue to move this bill forward. It got stuck in appropriations where all good bills go to languish for a bit, which is why we're reintroducing it. And one of the ways that we really ensure that this kind of bill gets passed is by focusing the legislature's attention on the opportunity costs when you actually don't provide adequate preventative care. Instead of thinking about budgets in terms of this year versus next year. And we really need to think about the cost savings that come when we actually engage in holistic preventative care, and we'll be pushing that. So we're actually going to need your help out there in our community to do advocacy, to send in letters, to make sure that you're hearing your voice is being heard with the administration, the health department, and other legislators to make sure this gets passed. Monica, do you want to add anything?
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, perfect. And so there's also a question here where someone is asking, how can we continue to support formerly incarcerated communities? And let me have a look and see, hopefully, Gail, if you're still on the line with us, or Heidi, and Assemblymember Bonta.
Go ahead, Gail.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So this community member is asking, how can we continue to support formerly incarcerated communities?
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't even know where to begin. So the first part, I think, I will say from the reentry perspective, currently something that we are tackling with is how to support folks when they're about to come home. So right when they're about to leave prison, how to support them and make sure that they have all of the crucial things that they need, including something that's as simple as an ID, things that we need to be able to apply for a job, apply for benefits. A lot of folks incarcerated are not able to get an ID because they have their driver's license is expired and then they don't have an updated picture. And I know that there's legislation in place or recent laws passed that would help folks be able to get IDs, but that hasn't really been implemented. So first off, just making sure that folks are able to get IDs. And then also right now when folks are coming home, they have what's known as gate money or release allowance, and that's only $300. And it hasn't changed since the 90s. And so $300 is supposed to help them get back on their feet, and also that means anything from transportation to food to hotels, that is supposed to all come out of $300. And as you all know, the cost of living wage right now is very high. So $300 doesn't get you far. And so something that we have been looking into is around just making sure that the $300 is the $300 that they get, and that transportation costs and any other supports is something that's separate from that money. It should be funded and sourced from other areas. So those have been like the key things that we've been thinking about, just to make sure that as soon as folks are able to step outside of prison, they have all the foundational support that they need, from money to IDs, so that way they can set themselves up for success. And then also, of course, housing, making sure that folks, when they're coming home, they have a place to live. And I know that we are in a housing shortage. There's a lot of barriers, especially folks with criminal records, around housing and around applying for jobs. Those are all very essential things that they need to be able to get themselves to be more stable and set themselves up for success.
And, I feel like before you chime in, Assemblymember Bonta, there's a question in the question and answer where someone is asking a little bit more about the 21 million that is to support prison programs. And so I know, as chair of Budget Sub 5, there was just so much advocacy and work that you did in that space. So I'm curious if we can kind of answer. I think the question could be answered as well.
Sure. I think Gail kind of laid out such critical pieces. The bottom line is the state of California spends $14.6 billion a year on our prison system, on our carceral system, and only less than 1% is provided to community-based organizations to support rehabilitation and reentry programming. That's why we focused on putting the R back into rehabilitation back into CDCR with our legislation this year. So we were able to really push to make sure that at least we had $21 million provided to community-based organizations, which have proven to be the most effective in preventing recidivism and providing the best opportunity for reentry for people who are leaving our carceral system, or while they're in our carceral system, to have rehabilitation programming. So it's really important that we ramp up that number for sure, but we were able to ensure through the budget advocacy that we did while I was chair of Budget Sub 5 Public Safety to make that that amount of funding available to our community organizations.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much, Gail. Anything further you would add, Heidi?
No, Assemblymember Bonta and Gail did a great job of covering this topic.
Okay, perfect. And so I think that really leads us into, there was a question around housing supply. How can we continue to expand our housing supply? And then I think I will note that there's a question here that is asking about, what about bringing back the ADU legislation from last year by not requiring a sub-meter? And so Heidi, I welcome you to join this conversation on this. And then if Sarah, if you're still here with us from the city of Alameda, please, you're welcome to help in answering this one as well.
This is actually legislation we're working on with the city of Oakland, and Monica's actually been in the weeds on this one. But to leave a very long answer short, Assemblymember Bonta is planning on continually working on that legislation. So Assemblymember Bonta, I don't know if you wanted to expand more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ADU, the metering streamlining bill that we focused on last year essentially addressed this very simple issue. Someone wants to put up an ADU, which is great. It allows us to be able to infill, allows us to be able to engage in more preservation. It allows people to be able to have affordable housing built into their homes, keep our families together, and provide some rental income because they're rentable. The issue is that in order to be able to put a meter in right now, it can cost anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 to be able to do so, making it really cost prohibitive for people to use this really valuable ADU opportunity to actually install to further the opportunity for more affordable housing. So our bill focused on allowing there to be one meter for the whole home. And the whole property, and to reduce that cost for being able to enter into the ADU market, so to speak. That bill got a lot of pushback from PG&E and other providers, and we're up for the challenge again. We're planning to reintroduce this bill because we think it's a very simple fix to be able to ensure that we have more opportunity to continue to build affordable housing throughout our district and the state.
Excellent. And then Sarah, was there anything additional that you would like to add, or?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that thanks to people like the Assemblymember championing policies like this, that's how we build more housing. So thank you very much to your office.
Perfect. And so one of the questions also previously submitted, and there's a few in the chat as well, where the community is asking about your priorities as you go into the new year. So would you like to expand on that, Assemblymember Bonta?
Thank you. Absolutely. So we're currently putting together our legislative package for this next year. There are several bills that we are moving forward with that are essentially 2-year bills. We were able to talk about some of those previously: Food is Medicine, the ADU streamlining bill, and others. So we'll continue to do those. All the really kind of gnarly fun bills take a little longer sometimes, and we'll continue to do that. This year, we will be continuing to focus in on what I am really focused in on, which is anti-poverty legislation. And related to that is ensuring that we are taking full advantage of more direct engagement with the health committee. So we'll be focusing on access to quality health care, an opportunity to really look at the impacts of public health. We will focus in on the concerns around pollutants in our air and the air quality from the industry in certain parts of our district. And that will be a legislative focus as well. We'll continue to focus on affordable housing with an affordability, working with school districts to ensure that we provide an opportunity to use surplus land that school districts have to build workforce housing and low-income housing that is directly from the work that organizations like that OEA did over this last year, and Alameda Unified has done previously, to try to ensure that we can make highest and best use of the land that school districts have available to them for housing. And we'll continue to focus on issues related to economic development and public safety as well.
Excellent. And so many of the questions, also ask, how can the community continue to support you?
I love being back in the district right now. We've been in intercession since late September or early September. And it's been great to be able to reconnect with so many different community members and community groups. Many of you have been able to meet with our office to discuss legislation that you think is important for us to carry, and we're reviewing that. We've had an opportunity to go to many events and to show up in full force. We're so thankful to our district team and Team Bonta for having that kind of presence throughout our community. Right now, the best way to support our office is to make sure that you are connecting with us, sharing your concerns, and making sure that we are aware of what is of priority to you all, so that we can continue to represent the district with the intention and thought that we've hopefully have been able to focus on this last legislative cycle as well. I see a question in the chat about issues related to community safety. We've had many meetings with restaurants, with retailers, with people who are entrepreneurs, with family members and community members to try to see how we might best address that. We're working very closely, especially with the city of Oakland, the mayor and the administration's team, to line out ways that we can garner more resources from the state to be able to support that, whether it's law enforcement resources, to just add an opportunity to have more visibility in retail corridors, or to be able to provide some additional assistance to small businesses while they try to recover from COVID and the higher incidence of property theft and damage that they are experiencing. So we're working very closely with the governor's administration on this, and we'll continue to be supportive of the efforts throughout the district that our local heroes are taking, in our community members are taking, to make sure that we can have thriving communities throughout 8018.
Excellent. And so we also dropped in the chat ways to stay connected with the office. So there's the contact Assemblymember Bonta link. Additionally, we have our newsletter. And just this year alone, we've been able to engage, I believe there was like 2.1 million folks with our newsletter. So please sign up for our newsletter that offers so many valuable resources for the community. It's something that we really take pride in, so don't miss out. And so at this time, I would like to invite Assemblymember Bonta to offer the closing remarks for our town hall discussion.
I want to thank you all, and I know that we will make sure to integrate some of the questions that we weren't able to get to in the newsletter and blast that we will put out with this town hall. I really appreciate being able to have so many of you hop onto our town hall and to just hear what we are up to. Want to just really provide a shout out to our team, both in the district and in the Capitol. You see them here. They work very hard for you every single day. In our district office, we have Rowena Brown, Helser Zavala, Rakia Lacey, Sam Kevy, who are holding it down. You'll see them often at community events, being responsive to constituent calls and just out there every single day. In our Capitol office, our Capitol team, led by our Chief of Staff, Tomasa Dueñas, and Heidi Dominguez, our new legislative director, as well as Monica Sepulveda, Eliza Brooks, our leg aides, and hopefully a fellow that we will have joining us very soon, hold it down for us. We're all working to make sure that we can make the legislature a place where that 8018 can count on and really help to grow. I want to make sure that we continue the conversations that we've started here from here. I want to hear from as many of us as we can. Thank you so much for being a part of this town hall. We'll continue to do these because we think it's a really great touch point to be able to lift up the work that we are doing, and for you to know what all is going on in the state of California, and the work that we're doing in this office on your behalf. So we look forward to fortifying this work over the course of the next year. And we're working for you every single day. Please don't hesitate to contact us with questions. Please know that we really value the constituent support services as a place that you all can get some individualized help as you need it. And I want to thank you. Look forward to sending out that e-newsletter, and that will summarize this conversation. And thank you for being an amazing community to be able to represent and support. Go 8018.